All right, and so welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be focusing on the latest developments in the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Yeah.
Specifically, some really interesting reporting from the Financial Times. And what caught my eye was this unexpected shift in Russian strategy that's got a lot of folks wondering what this means for both sides and the possibility of getting any negotiations going.
Yeah, no, it really is a fascinating turn of events. We've been watching Russia's pretty brutal urban warfare tactics for over a year now.
Right.
And now they seem to be kind of shifting gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Instead of just this head-on fight for Pokrovsk, which is a really strategically important city in Donetsk,
Right.
they're bypassing it.
Yeah, they're going around it and focusing on pushing south and west, trying to cut off those supply lines to Pokrovsk and force a Ukrainian retreat.
Yeah, like they're changing their game plan mid-match.
Yeah, exactly.
Which could be for a number of reasons. I think one possibility is that Russia is, they're facing significant manpower shortages after more than a year of conflict.
Right.
I mean, remember, they've already mobilized hundreds of thousands of troops.
Yeah.
And sustaining that level of manpower, that's a challenge for any military.
Yeah, it's a big ask.
So bypassing a major urban battle like Pokrovsk, that could be a way to conserve their resources, try to avoid heavy casualties.
Makes sense. I mean, they are facing a determined Ukrainian defense.
Oh, absolutely.
And those urban battles, as we've seen, they can be incredibly costly.
Yes, they can.
So are they just playing it safe, or is there like a bigger, strategic goal at play here?
Well, the reports are suggesting that, this maneuver could be aimed at reaching a key highway that leads to Dnipropetrovsk, which is a vital Ukrainian stronghold.
Okay, so why is that highway so important?
Well, the Dnipropetrovsk is home to Ukraine's fourth largest city.
Right.
And a major military base.
Okay.
So if Russia manages to take control of that highway, they could potentially cut off a really crucial supply route for Ukrainian forces in the east and put them in a very vulnerable position.
So it's not just about capturing territory, it's about disrupting their ability to defend themselves?
Exactly.
But I was reading that the terrain in this area is pretty rough. They described it as deep and muddy and basically impassable.
Yeah, really tough going is how one Ukrainian soldier put it.
Oh, wow.
So even if Russia's aiming for that highway, it's not going to be a walk in the park.
No.
The speed of their advance is really going to depend on how well Ukraine can leverage that terrain to their advantage.
Right. It sounds like a pretty grueling situation for the soldiers on both sides.
Oh, absolutely.
But what about the bigger picture here?
Yeah.
I mean, Russia has already gained a lot of ground in Donetsk this past year.
They have.
They've captured, 4,200 square kilometers?
Around there, yeah.
So is this all just about, land grabs before potential negotiations?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are they trying to just amass as much territory as possible?
Right.
To strengthen their position in any future peace talks? I mean, historically, territorial disputes have been a major sticking point in this region.
Oh, sure.
And controlling key areas like Donetsk that could give Russia considerable leverage at the negotiating table.
So they might be sacrificing short-term gains, in places like Pokrovsk.
Possibly.
To get that stronger hand in the long run?
Potentially. It's a high-stakes gamble, for sure.
It is.
And speaking of high stakes, there's another development that's added a whole other layer of complexity to this conflict, and that's the capture of North Korean prisoners of war in the Kursk region of Russia.
Wait, North Korean POWs. Now, that's a twist I did not see coming.
It definitely caught everyone off guard.
Yeah.
Remember Ukraine launched that renewed offensive in Kursk?
After they lost ground there in August, yeah.
Exactly.
And I guess occupying Russian territory is kind of seen as a bargaining chip for them in any future negotiations.
It is.
Puts the pressure on, right? It sends a message that they're willing to fight on multiple fronts.
Right.
But what are North Korean soldiers doing in this conflict? That's a whole new player entering the game.
Well, Zelensky himself has said the world needs to know the truth about what is happening. So it seems that North Korea is playing a role, although the extent of their involvement and their motivations, it's still a bit of a mystery.
And to add to that, we have the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, weighing in on this, stating that the situation in Kursk will undoubtedly be a factor in any potential negotiations.
Precisely.
So it seems that both the territorial gains in Donetsk and the occupation of Kursk, those could become pretty significant bargaining chips for both sides as the conflict unfolds.
Absolutely. We're witnessing a very complex interplay of military maneuvers and political calculations and international pressure, all with, potentially huge ramifications for the future of the region.
So we've got Russia shifting strategies in Donetsk, possibly aiming for that crucial highway to Dnipropetrovsk. Then we have Ukraine pushing into Kursk, capturing North Korean POWs along the way, and potentially leveraging that territory for future negotiations.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is, and we're just getting started.
Indeed, and the questions just keep piling up, What will the consequences be if Russia reaches Dnipropetrovsk?
Right.
How will the international community react to North Korea's involvement?
Yeah.
And most importantly, what does this all mean for the prospects of peace?
Well, those are some heavy questions, and we'll be digging into them even further as our deep dive continues.
So we were just discussing how both Russia and Ukraine seem to be maneuvering for potential negotiations.
Right, trying to get some leverage.
Exactly. Each trying to secure as much leverage as they can in the process. And it kind of raises some crucial questions like, what concessions might each side be willing to make?
Yeah.
What are their absolute non-negotiables?
Right, because neither side seems likely to achieve a complete military victory at this point.
No.
I mean, this conflict's been dragging on for over a year.
It has.
Both sides have suffered heavy losses.
Yeah, so at some point there's going to have to be a dialogue, some sort of compromise.
Right.
But figuring out what that compromise looks like, that's the real challenge.
Yeah, and it's easy to get caught up in analyzing all the strategic moves, the territorial gains, and the potential for negotiations, but we can't lose sight of the human cost of this conflict.
That's an essential point. I mean, but behind all the kind of geopolitical maneuvering are real people whose lives have been completely upended by this war.
Right.
Soldiers on both sides, civilians displaced from their homes.
Families torn apart.
Exactly. I mean, their stories are just as important as all the strategic analysis.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that this conflict isn't just about abstract concepts like territory or political power. It's about, the very real human lives and the profound impact that war has on them.
Indeed. And that human cost should be at the forefront of our minds as we consider the potential paths to peace.
Absolutely.
What kind of future are we striving for here? One where violence and suffering just continue, or one where diplomacy and reconciliation are given a chance to prevail?
That's a heavy question, but it's one we can't afford to ignore.
Exactly. And it's a question the international community needs to grapple with collectively.
Right.
What role can we play in supporting a peaceful resolution?
Yeah.
How can we hold all parties accountable for their actions and ensure that justice is served?
It's challenging, but they're questions we need to keep asking.
We do.
If we want to see a different outcome.
Absolutely.
We can't just analyze the conflict. We have to engage with it.
Yeah.
Try to understand the motivations and goals of all those involved.
I completely agree, because ultimately the goal should be to create a future where peace and stability are not just aspirations, but realities.
Well said.
Thank you.
Now, before we kind of dive into those bigger picture questions, let's take a step back and look at another aspect of this conflict, the unexpected consequences that are rippling across the globe. So we've been talking about the strategic shifts and the human cost of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, but there's another angle to consider, the unexpected global consequences.
Right.
And did you know that this war has a direct impact on something we encounter almost every day? Chocolate.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it might seem like a strange connection, but it kind of highlights how interconnected our world truly is.
Yeah.
So Ukraine is one of the world's leading producers of sunflower oil, which is a key ingredient in a lot of food products, including chocolate.
Huh. Interesting.
But with the conflict disrupting agricultural production and global supply chains, the price of sunflower oil has just skyrocketed, and that's impacting the cost of everything from cooking oil to those sweet treats that we all enjoy.
So the ripples of this conflict are being felt way beyond the battlefields, reaching into our pantries and our grocery stores.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that what happens in one corner of the world can have a significant impact on us all, even in ways we might not immediately realize.
That's very true.
It's fascinating how something seemingly simple, like a bar of chocolate, can connect us to a conflict happening thousands of miles away.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've come a long way from discussing Russian troop movements in Donetsk to the price of sunflower oil.
We have.
It's amazing how these deep dives always reveal these unexpected connections.
I know that's the beauty of exploring a topic in depth.
Yeah.
You start with a specific focus.
Yeah.
But as we peel back the layers, we discover a whole web of interconnected issues and consequences.
Right.
It really helps us to see that bigger picture and appreciate the complexity of the world we live in.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We talked about Russia's strategic shift in Donetsk, their potential push towards that key highway to Dnipropetrovsk, the surprise of those North Korean POWs in Kursk, and the implications of all these developments for future negotiations.
A lot.
We also touch on the human cost of this conflict and the unexpected consequences that are being felt globally.
Right. It's a lot to process, and the situation is constantly evolving. But I think as we continue to follow this conflict, it's crucial to remember those human stories at its heart.
Yeah.
To consider those broader global implications and to stay informed about the potential path towards peace.
That's a great point to end on. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we encourage you to continue exploring, asking questions, and seeking a deeper understanding of this complex and ever-changing conflict.
Definitely.
Until next time, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.